I owe you an update, another one. And last time I left you with the cliffhanger that I'm gonna use that nice beer fill machine, that one over here, that I will test it with real beer. And I had an appointment with an old friend of mine. I mean, we know each other probably since we're 5 or so, because it's a friend, it's the children of a friend of my father, and he commented on a Facebook post when I showed the beer filling machine that he's like, yeah, if you want to test, come over, we have our microbrewery and you can come over and test. So I went. It was quite a drive. I mean, he's still near Basel, I'm here in Winterthur, so it's 1.5 hour one way to drive, but it was nice to see these two guys again, together with their father, who is also an engineer, and we had a lot of very fruitful exchange over the years. And it was nice to see all them again. I have the footage for the whole trip and everything, but when we started pouring beer, I was like, yeah, let's just fine-tune it for the perfect shot, and I didn't shoot anything. I was so frustrated. I was just making foam. Just foam. That was kind of frustrating. And what was also frustrating is I went together with the guy I wanted to get into that business as a sales guy, because he worked in sales, and I asked him, yeah, if he was in the B2C sales, like in a shop selling computers, smartphones and stuff like that. And I asked him, would you be interested in moving over to B2B sales, where you get nicer commissions, bigger sales per sale usually, because you're not selling a few $100 worth of value of item, but more like a few $1,000. He was like, yeah, sounds good to me and great. And I told him also, yeah, this is going to be much nicer commission for you for every sale you make, because the sales commission he got from the shop he was working in kind of meager. So I tried to onboard it into my startup. That was the second frustrating experience. I mean, we had a nice ride to near Basel and a nice ride back, and could have a lot of talks and stuff and so on about how to get rich, how to make money, and all these interesting entrepreneurial topics, actually. But knowing stuff and thinking about it is completely worthless. It is completely worthless. What really creates value is doing. Just do it! And I tried to get him into like getting to do something, just so to figure out what can he do, what can't he do, because he came with basically no formal education. Major skills, as I see them, are people skills. He's very good at talking to people, at making people feel comfortable. That's what he did to me, and I felt very comfortable, and I trusted him and was like, yeah, let's do that. And so I was like, yeah, that could be a winning team. I'm more the geek engineer guy, and he's more the sales guy. He will go sell, and I will make it work, which sounds like a dream team to start a company. But you need people who do things, people who can read a calendar. I made appointments with him that somehow he forgot or was busy elsewhere. And after a while, I was just like, no, it's just not gonna work, because I don't want him to let my customers down like he let me down. So that was also a frustrating part. I'd probably love to have a few beers with him, but that's really a big challenge. I'd like to go on a light tangent, is how you find co-founders for your startup. Something I've been struggling with for over a decade. It's really hard to find people willing to spend their free time into something that might bring a reward a year later, or even later than a year later. Some startups you take many years until you make money. It's very easy to do your job if you have to pay your bills, and you have that job, and you have to go there, you have your schedule, and somehow you get yourself together to do that one job. On the other hand, if once you have that job that somehow pays your bills, doing more than that for something that is not immediately rewarding, that's where it gets tricky. I think that's the number one skill you need to succeed at building some kind of startup, side hustle, whatever, to get independent, to become your own boss. I tried. It was worth a try, and maybe it's me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just such a bad leader that I can't convince people that it's worth the effort. It's difficult to know. But besides that, the biggest problem I think I have identified back in the beer machine, the biggest problem I think I have identified with the beer machine, it's the hose pinch valve. This is the valve where I move this lower jaw and I just pinch the hose, right? And having that valve, the first version, I built everything around a hose with inner diameter of 10 millimeters, and I realized that if I completely open up the valve with 1 bar pressure on my keg, this led to a very, very high flow. So, like I was filling, what is that? That's a 0.3 liter cup in less than a second, which might sound great in the first place, but in the second place, if you have to, in the meantime, check your weight, how full are we, to have the time to close the valve again, too fast becomes a problem, because your glass is full before you even realize, and it starts overflowing before you have the time to close the valve. So I just slightly opened up the valve, but that led, having that narrow part in the hose led to an acceleration of the flow and a sudden decrease of pressure right after that. So that sudden decrease of pressure is, in my opinion, what led to just generating foam, because you were so quickly reducing the pressure that the beer started bubbling. So what did I do? I was like, okay, we need to not keep the valve nearly closed, but completely open it up so we have a straight tube, we have no changes in velocity and pressure. I went down 8 millimeter hose, because from 10 to 8 you think it's a slight change, but yeah, the area is to the square and the velocity profile is also, so it makes a big difference. It really makes a big difference in flow. The problem I have now is that I was impatient and I just went to my next DIY shop. I bought this hose here, which is PVC. It's a PVC hose instead of a silicone hose, because the other one, I got it from AliExpress, it's a silicone hose. And now look what happened to the PVC. You see that after I left it pinched for several days, which is a realistic scenario. I must expect that the user of the machine at some point will close the valve, put it in storage for months, maybe over a whole winter, and in the spring he wants to take it out, the next big beer event, wants to take it out and it has to run. That is a scenario that happens, that you pinch that hose for a longer time. And if you do that with the PVC, you see it stays closed like this. And so since it is pinched at this point, at exactly about this area here, that's where the sudden drop in pressure occurs. That's, I think, the reason why we have foam. So I, of course, have ordered this 6 millimeter hose actually. I went from 8 to 6. That's the thing I did. So that is silicone, and the good thing about silicone compared to the PVC is it stays flexible. It's not like, if you can pinch it closed for quite a while, and after that you just open it up and you have no issues that it won't completely open up. I hope. But if that doesn't work, I have another option. It's a ball valve, which then leads me away completely from the hose valve approach, which then means we have interfaces and stuff like that, which might cause other problems. But the ball valve, since it has a ball, it has actually a ball with a hole like that, and you rotate it. So if it's like that, the flow doesn't go through, and if it goes like that, the whole flow goes through. Don't misinterpret my gestures. It is purely about beer flowing through valves. The Bart valve has the advantage that if you open it up, you have a straight bore through the whole thing with no changes in diameter and stuff like that. That one is also ordered, will also come in. But still, foam is an issue. So since I also have a tendency to procrastinate, when I start getting frustrated, I sometimes go on a tangent here and there. And so one of the tangents, this little test rig here, which here has a stepper motor. You see the motor? Yeah, that's the motor. Power supply. And this is one of my old boards with the SCM32. And what's dangling down here is the next generation of stepper driver. You remember I already moved from the 4988 to the Trinamic one. That was a 25 or something like that. Then I moved to the next Trinamic driver, which has a feature, I think I already have mentioned it, which has the step loss detection. So it detects when it loses steps. And it gives you that feedback on a pin. But that means you have to communicate with that driver, not just sending it steps and direction, but you have a UART interface, like a serial port on each driver, where you can go configure what's the current, what's the threshold for detecting skips or lost steps, and so on. You have many, many parameters you can set on these little drivers, but it comes with the big advantage that you don't need end-stop sensors anymore. You don't need a sensor to go homing because you can do sensorless homing. And it works. And the base program, I could get it to run to detect step loss, and I used all this knowledge to design the next version. That's an old one, but the next version of this board is in the mail, and with that I will be able to do sensorless homing. It's nice to have. The focus should be on getting this thing out in the field and running. I'm fully aware of that. But I'm waiting for parts anyway, and sometimes you need some time to let things macerate or yield. I mean, that's something I realized. If I'm stuck somewhere, just leave it alone for a few days, do something different, and suddenly the new ideas come up. Yeah, and one important thing what I learned is that whole beer valve here, that whole setup here needs to be unit tested, needs to be tested, just the valve out of the machine independently, so I can have a look at it. Do I get the beer flowing like I want it, independent of all other things? If it's inside here, I have no real chance to know what's going on, right? If I have it outside, I can exactly check, since the hose is transparent, that's the good thing, where the foam appears and what happens exactly. That's the update. The update is, there is no real update. It's still not filling beer. The beer filling was so frustrating to me. I also spent some time on my other project to get something else to do. I'm not sure if I told you. I will call it the Shotbot, because that's actually an idea I got from that other guy who I wanted to have as a sales guy, because he's working also in gastronomy, in bars and stuff. So that's why I thought he would be a great fit. And he would be a great fit with his knowledge and his connections, but he is a bad fit with his just simple work ethic and self-discipline. The basic idea is I have bought these ones, these nice glass syringes, which the cool thing about these is it's glass on glass. So it is 100% food safe because glass is inert. And out of these, I wanted to make a machine that can mix drinks, or in a first version, just fill shots. Just make shots. That's the first thing I want to do. And once I have the shots going, I can do more, like having many of these and start adding 1 ounce of this, 2 ounces of this, or 2 centiliters of this, and 5 centiliters of this, and so on. So once I have this technology ongoing, and in order to make it look nice, because this is more like for a bar, it's not a tent at a festival or at a football match, I'm starting to assemble these parts it's all wiggly. It's another issue I have, is that I designed the whole thing for 4mm plywood, but then I cut it in 3mm plywood because that's the only thing I had in that makerspace. I got a feeling for the laser cutter I have access to in the makerspace, and the good thing is if I'm pouring vodka or tequila or bourbon or whatever, foam will not be an issue. It's just like, because I'm a bit traumatized by foam at the moment. The problem I have, which I had to realize, is I needed the outer diameter of this, right? So I measured it, and I measured up here. And now I realize down here is the thickest part. And so I made this holder here, and I wanted to put that one in like that, and of course it doesn't fit. I made a little bit of useless wood. The good thing, if I have two projects running in parallel, is that if one of them is stuck, I can invest time or get the other one running. But in the meantime, it takes away some focus. I'm fully aware of that. The advantage of a side hustle versus a startup, the advantage is you have more or less an infinite runway. I mean, my goal is still to somehow get to a festival that summer, and summer is coming closer. We have 1st of May today, so summer is really coming closer, but my bills are paid even if I miss the deadline. So I'll keep going. But so that's more or less the update. Stay tuned for more. And if you have any questions, if you want, actually my test code for the Trinamic 2209 is on GitHub if someone is interested in looking at that, because that's a little test script. I just, any suggestions on how to avoid foam in beer are welcome. Put them in comments below. And yeah,